what's up? I'm back.
So what do you got this time for us?
I got Happy Dayz, which is a collection of Ableton racks, acid generators, 303 style, for Goa, Psytrance, for acid techno, or any kind of music that needs a little more acid.
I think everyone can need a little bit more acid. So let's turn on, tune in, and drop out.
So just a note here, we're going to go over some stuff that we talked about in a previous session where we talked about Sequence Lab, which is melodies, ARPs, whatever. So we're using the same MIDI device in this one. And yeah, if you want to learn more about it, go back to that episode and you go more in detail there. So here we got this acid control, note sequencer, note length. Okay, so let's just have a listen. We got 5 classic acids, 2 which I've titled Happy Dayz. These 2 are made with operator, and one with operator, one with wavetable. These 2 are made with the analog. So I kind of wanted to try all the different instruments available in the Ableton collection and see what I could do to come up with, an acid sound. And they all sound pretty cool. Quite authentic, actually. I got this little guy here. Ooh, almost free. Just a quick overview. This acid control is basically the brain of this whole operation. So here we control the steps, the amount, this is the ARP steps. So this basically controls how many times it cycles through this guy. And that's the rate. So if you want to do, just like any ARP. So this is going through an ARP first. So we got the ARP here. Oh, yeah, and it cycles through these different notes. So this is like a sequencer. And here we got the note length. So here we can kind of make cool patterns with this is where we get our glide effect, because now we're basically opening up the note length so that they overlap. And then you get the glide, which is here in our instrument here. We can control the amount of glide right here. We got this velocity sequencer right here, and this is mapped to the cutoff. So this is effectively where you get in the 303, which you call the accent, right? So basically when your accent is activated, it basically just like opens up the filter. So you get these kind of like wow, 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 kind of where you like open, 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 open. But this could do the same thing, or you could get even more complex patterns because we have a lot more granular control with using the velocity. Instead of them all being the same, we can have like, completely different values for each one. So this is, basically flat, but then we could do like a cool pattern. Let's say like, we'll bring this up to like 102. Maybe this will sound like dog shit. Who knows? So, So just by having that expression control with the filter opening and like, and it's one thing doing it like randomly, but having it on a nice pattern, that's what gives that trance feeling, you know, having things like repeating nicely. And that's one thing that's one of my biggest gripes about the modern Psytrance sound. It's like there's very rare where they kind of like take a cool riff and then just jam on it. You know, it's always so chopped up. You know what I mean? I really like that more trancing feeling where you kind of like, you get a good riff and then you just like let it ride and you kind of like modulate it and let it evolve and stuff, and you can like, you know, play the cutoff so it like gradually builds tension over time. Like I miss that in trance music, to be honest.
So you mean that the melodies are now all like 16 bars, maximum 32 bars, and the old trance tracks had this like really long patterns?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, maybe it's just my memory. Maybe I'm...
No. It's definitely like that. I was listening just like a few weeks ago to this like One Love, I think from Electric Universe album, and it had like so much longer melodies and parts and everything in there. I think it's from the 90s or something, or
yeah. I mean, obviously they didn't have as sophisticated tools as they did, but yeah. So such is life. But I mean, yeah, it's kind of interesting to just see like the videos from the 90s. Just people look like they were dancing so much harder. You know what I mean? Like they're just so into it. No cell phones in sight. They're just like having it. And I started in 1999. So for me, I was like, I caught the tail end of the rave movement. And there was Goa trance there, but I was predominantly like drum and bass and like trance, hard techno, stuff like that. But we had a little Goa here in Canada.
I mean, it's still good in Psytrance. I mean, not as good as there, but I mean, I have been to some EDM parties as well, and there's like only people with phones, and we have still like people dancing on the dance floor, so that's good. Not just filming.
So yeah, here we have the note on off. So this effectively controls like, you know, just like creating rest. That's really fun. I mean, this whole kind of thing just makes it so fun to jam. You can easily record your MIDI too by sending it to a new channel, hit record. We did that in the last video. It's super fun to jam. And then if you create a new MIDI track and then set it to record, you could just jam all your riffs out, record all that MIDI, record all the stuff, and yeah, just super instant jammable sounds for your track. Just like,
do you have any like recommendations? I mean, obviously you want to feel it and play it, but where to put like the rests or the glides or the accents? Is there any? Because I always was wondering, you know, like if there's some cool tricks to that.
Well, the one thing I do is I like to try different like cycling my notes on different patterns. And also another thing about this pack is that it comes with a free, well, bonus, let's just say bonus MIDI files. And you're going to see, like, I did this a lot where, like, you know, you do in groups of 6 or groups of 3, you do 3 notes and kind of repeat those notes over. And then you get, so you can do like, and then you can do a glide. You
mean you have basically the melody? Let's say you have the melody 16/16 notes, and then maybe you put the glides kind of like as a polymeter, like every 3 notes a glide or something like that, or?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately you got to just jam and have fun with it. Like, I think that's the best way to do it. Just play around and twiddle around the knobs until it sounds good. I think some things, overanalyzing it will kind of be your worst enemy. At some point, it's better just to like hit play, start fiddling around with some knobs and go, oh, that sounds good. Cool thing about this is if you don't know your scales, you don't know any music theory, you know, we got a pretty good foundation here with these presets, if you want to call them variations. So yeah, you just basically dial in whatever you want and so yeah, that makes that super fun. And yeah, and all these have like different presets built right in. This guy right here, this controls the amount of where the velocity is, or the filter is reacting to the velocity. So the more you turn this up, this guy comes into play. All right, so if you just leave this flat, but you turn that up, and then yeah, you could do different grooves here. This thing just sounds awesome, doesn't it? It's not just a one-trick pony, you know. There's a whole bunch of different tones in there, basically ready to go, you know. Let's hear this guy. So I spent quite a while experimenting with the different distortions and all that stuff. So they have slightly different tones also. I think this one I was using the pedal board. That one sounds pretty good. I also made a... Let's just mute that. It's crazy how much of the tone of the acid is really in the distortion. But I experimented with a couple different options. I made this guy here. So it's a combination of the rock amp and fuzz. Sounds pretty gnarly. And I also tried this Saturn type 4-band distortion kind of thing by splitting up the bands and putting like a rock amp on low, mid, and so you can basically dial them in differently. yeah, then you can experiment with like trying different settings on each of these bands, just like, you know, just like any multi-band. It was just an experiment to try to get a more interesting kind of tone shaper out of it. That's in what the effects.
Actually, I ask everything what I wanted to know, especially the glides, you know, because why I ask it, especially because I noticed that a lot of tracks where they have this acid lines and then they put the glide at the end of the whole sequence as a like a closure thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, this makes it like super fun to do that, you know, because you could basically just like try different, you know, I mean, you could do it in a MIDI channel, you know, it does the same thing at the end of the day. You know, you could open up a MIDI clip and draw them in, but this just kind of like gives you like a hands-on kind of approach to, you know, just being able to experiment with different combinations quite fast. Yeah, and also if you want your glides to work properly, you got to play with this gate control. And you might want to open up your sustain. So it's so cool. I just playing with this this ARP steps gives you almost a completely different patterns. So I'm curious what everyone thinks. So leave this in the comments, guys. What do you think makes the best acid? The operator, wavetable, or here we're going to show the analog. That's Happy Days V1, and I got another version of it. I was just playing around with different ways of wiring it up, and so as you can see, like this one, the synth unit is up at the front before the acid control, so it's a different way of nesting the racks. So this is actually where the synth is, all the way back here. So we got these two analogs, and then these controls. I don't know if you've ever made racks, but if you've ever made racks before, basically every time you make a new group, you have to see, like if you unpack this guy, I can tell right now it's got all this stuff, and then these are all wired to this. So it's kind of like every time you make a new group, you map all the macros to the next one. Understand? So all these guys, so these are mapped to this guy, and these guys are mapped to this guy, then these guys are mapped to this guy, and then all these racks are kind of like sandwiched in between them. And then this guy here, this is like the final boss rack. So if you want to save this rack, you would save it here. So this is the rack that kind of like encompasses them all, the one at the very end. So it's kind of a crazy process.
Where the inception starts. And then you go deeper, one layer.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, because I never used Ableton before, I was like, okay, well, how does this work here? Oh my God. I used Ableton before, but I mean, I never really got sucked into making racks. So it was kind of a little bit of a process. So I had to like see the matrix to make these complicated fucking things. So yeah. So this is Happy Days 2. This last one's a little bit special because this one I made from a wavetable, not just a saw and then doing all this stuff, but actually like I sampled a filter sweep with the distortion already on the wavetable. So basically this filter movement is done with just actually going through the wavetable position. So it's kind of cool. That really reminds me of Lucas. So that one's a little bit less like an authentic 303, but still pretty cool. Or actually, you know, like if you have Exoforms, which is our wavetable collection on Outerverse, you could check out the acid waves. There's some acid wavetables there, and experiment with, yeah, here it is. So you have 2 layers here. I believe this whole chain mixing here is actually just to give one version that's in unison. Yeah, because look, this one is mono, and this one, this other chain, has 3 voices. So actually, this whole mix between these two synths is your stereo widespread.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, no, yeah, because there's no way to just assign that to a. It's kind of redundant. It's not redundant, but it's kind of like a waste of CPU just to do a simple function. But what to say?
And you can't do with like a utility and narrowing it down, or
Well, I mean, you're not gonna actually. There's no effect that really emulates duplicating the waveform from the synth. I mean, even like there's chorus. There's like actually one of the better ones is the one by Xfer, the dimension expander. It's also in Serum. It does a pretty good effect, but it doesn't actually, duplicate the oscillators and kind of give them a slight how do you say, like detuning, basically like a slight modulation.
is it the same as the hyper in Serum? The
Yeah, hyperdimension.
hyperdimension. Okay.
But a really interesting thing you could do too to make a spread in a synthesizer, if you don't have the option, is you can take one and duplicate it, and then like you do a really fast modulation with a noise oscillator. Sorry, not like a really fast SNH, or like a really fast random on one of the, like on a saw wave, and it'll make a detune kind of thing.
Yeah, I definitely have a favorite, but I don't want to like say it because we want to see in the comments which is your favorite, and then a week later I will post mine. But it was really interesting, especially like I like the distortion, how you added it, how much it kind of like changed the sound, and it's really cool as it sounds. And I also have like a 303 here, and I barely use it because I love so much working in the DAW and not recording out things. So that will be really helpful, I think. Having
one of my next purchases is going to be a rat pedal. It's like a distortion pedal. Apparently, it's what all the classic acid artists use back in the days. Now you could find there's 2 different versions of the rat. Oh, I think there's a couple of different versions, but there's 2 main distinctions between the older ones and the newer ones, being that the older ones were made with a different chip. I forget the name of the chip exactly. I have to look it up, but it's 2 different chips. So you want the original one. So they're a little bit more expensive, actually probably double, but you can still find them around on Marketplace. But that's like the original pedal, or the acid sound. The rat with the old chip.
And would you say like if you run like through analog gear, because then the distortion is nicer, or because if you like crank it in the DAW into distortion, it gets like this a little bit more annoying type, or and if you have it like in the analog, you get more this warm touch, and it has kind of
that's it. Well, that's it. That pedal I'm talking about is it's a guitar pedal.
Yeah, analog, so basically you route the sound out into the pedal and then re-record it into the DAW.
Exactly. So, and that's like, and I mean, apparently it really makes a difference. Just that chip. You want the old chip. It just like sounds better. It's just smoother, creamier.
Actually, what I did on some assets there's like from Native Instruments this guitar thing. It has like a lot of like different distortion things, and it's also pretty cool for assets.
Cool, nice, killer, man. Sure that. Yeah, there's plenty of options. I mean, look. I think at this point, like, I think the difference that what you would hear, especially once you like put it in a Psytrance track, I mean, let's be honest, like there's so much of that space being taken by the kick bass and drums. Like, really, you're gonna hear like that much of like you're using this distortion or that distortion? Like, that's really. I mean, I think you have to be a real nerd to really kind of be like, oh, that distortion is more. So I mean, just for all the folks out there, don't worry about it too much if you don't want to go through all the trouble of getting guitar pedals from 1998.